We are delighted to have you here for this wonderful opportunity to come together to do a deep dive into community building, into the concepts of community vibrancy, and into the concepts of policy and how it affects all those ideas. So we're a little behind already on schedule, so I'm going to keep my remarks really brief and get us going. We have a great panel that follows my remarks, follows Ariela's remarks as well. So I'll do this kind of quick and try to frame this really easily for everybody. But let me first start off by acknowledging our sponsors and a few guests here. We have Fremont Bank, El Camino Health, and Christy Sereno. Well, Christy's International Real Estate Sereno. Did I get that right, Kirsty? Yes? As our sponsors for this event, we'd like to thank you for your support for it and helping bring this together for us. I'd also like to acknowledge both the donors in here in the room as well as our Legacy Circle donors, those who have made a commitment to the foundation through their estate plans and wills. I'd also like to acknowledge the community organizations, the elected officials, the other dignitaries who are here, those who are interested, the business sector, and community members who are coming forward to participate in this conversation. So thank you for coming out here. The concept that we've started with is community vibrancy. Why do we care about community vibrancy? And I will sum it up in real kind of short kind of sentence that when we look at community vibrancy, we're looking at a community that is characterized by active participation, positive relationships, a strong sense of belonging, and a shared sense of purpose and vision. And more than anything, I can imagine that as we reflect on what the past 3 years have meant for us, as well as how we have looked at our own community over the past few decades, these are facets that have sometimes been missing in our daily lives and the way that we look at our community altogether. So this concept of vibrancy is at the core of what we as a foundation have tried to tackle, try to program against, try to engage on as well. And this convening is a method for us to actually focus on this concept of community vibrancy. The foundation itself started off, almost 33 years ago. Joe, where are you? You can help me with the history if you want. But, sorry? 1991, that's right. The fall of the Soviet Union. For those of you like your history dates. And it started off as a concept of a community bank. It really came together for people in the local community to pull together their resources. And it evolved from there into what we now see ourselves as a community asset, a organization that not only understands what's happening locally, but also helps bring people together to solve some of the more systemic issues that we're facing as a community. Part of that is intentional in our understanding of what are the issues that we are facing. So you'll see, for instance, the panel conversations that we're having today are really deep dives into conversations that we have been tracking on the local level and have been engaged in. And others are really sort of opportunities for us to educate others about what we're also unearthing and what we're hearing about in the community. We have a very unusual position in the community, being able to take in a lot of information and touch a lot of different segments of the community at the same time, because we're not issue-centric in the sense that we're solely focused on, let's say, education or teens or other components of that. We have a wider vantage point. And that is a privileged position to be in. It allows us to understand what's happening on the local level, but also bring that visibility to others and to engage in conversation. One of the components of community vibrancy is really having an active resident base that actually is involved in solutions, in identifying approaches that help us understand and also tackle both the issues that we're seeing as symptoms of disparities, let's say, but also try to address the causes of disparities at the same time. And by focusing our attention on these kinds of components, we are able to hopefully move the agenda forward and really bring connections between people back into a stronger sense of how we actually function as a community. One of the things that we've discovered over, I will say, the past few decades has been sort of this loss of connection the loss that people in neighborhoods actually don't talk to each other. I live in one part of Mountain View. Most of my neighbors don't actually talk to other parts of Mountain View. And yet we all identify as Mountain View, and we're all part of a ecosystem that actually touches Los Altos and Los Altos Hills as well. And yet we don't really have that connection. And this is, I think, the idea that we can actually tackle together as communities to help reconnect, focus on those issues that we can actually tackle, name those issues that we should be trying to address and move forward, and celebrate those achievements when we can actually make those happen. Part of the work that we do is really focus on community building and really leadership development as well. I will bring up Ariela Steinberg to help sort of amplify that. The work that we do in that context is really designed to give community members that we touch opportunities to become engaged. And we don't look at that as just simply something that someone in retirement should be doing. We look at that as something that anyone from the age of, school age, secondary school age and upwards can actually be involved in. Ariela is a member of our teen philanthropy program, E3. She is on school break this week, so she's not missing class for this. But one of the things that we asked her to do is to give a little bit of visibility about leadership development and community building from her perspective. So I'll bring Ariela up for a few minutes.
Good morning. So for those of you who don't know, as Adin said, my name is Ariela. I'm 17 years old, and I'm currently a junior at Kehillah High School, Kehillah Jewish High School. So I've been doing community service since I was about 8 years old. And one of the service projects I most enjoyed working on since then was when I ran my own book drive through African Library Project during the summer of 2018. Whenever my mom tells a story, she always remarks about how worried she was that she was going to end up doing a lot of the work that I signed up for. After all, 12-year-olds don't typically strike people as particularly organized or efficient. But my mom had little to fear. As soon as I officially signed up to host a book drive, I quickly began writing emails to send out to various lists asking for both books and monetary donations. I distinctly remember the first set of books I collected. Someone in our neighborhood reached out to me saying that they had a few children's books they were happy to part with if I could come pick them up. The next day, I rode my bike to their house and filled my backpack with books. Needless to say, riding a bike during a hot summer day and lugging around books typically isn't a lot of fun, but I felt like I was flying through the neighborhood that day. Many, many, many emails later, I had coordinated the collection of several hundred books, and just as the books began to take up a significant portion of our garage, I got an email from a teacher who was redoing their class library and was happy to give away some old books as long as I could come pick them up. Due to scheduling conflicts, I wasn't able to come, but luckily my younger sister and my dad pitched in and went for me. Later that day, I had quite the surprise when I went to check the garage and saw that the entire floor was now covered with boxes of books. I had so many books I actually had to give some of them away to a person who was running their own book drive. Now, this story is quite old, at least for me. So why do I mention it? 2 reasons. First, because doing this book drive gave me a newfound sense of accomplishment and confidence, not only for myself, but also for my community, which had helped me collect so many books. I proved my mom wrong, and more importantly, I proved to myself how capable I was, even as a 12-year-old. The second reason is that I'm actually in the process of another book drive right now, but this one is related to E3. E3 is run by the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation, and it's a community service group for teens who live in Los Altos and Mountain View. We get to learn about the nonprofit sector and work on various community service projects together. And in E3, each year, all the students get sorted into cause groups based on our interests. And for the past 2 years, I've been part of the Educational Equity cause group. We've been working on renovating an RV into a bookmobile for the organization Move Mountain View. Last year, we painted the exterior of the van, and this year, we're focusing on revamping the interior and collecting books to fill the van with. I've been especially enjoying how local this project has been, especially in comparison to sending books to Africa. It would be remiss if I didn't mention that E3 is currently looking for applicants to join us for next year. So if you know of any teens who might be interested, please let them know about E3. Now back to the speech. I wanted to end by saying that for all those who may be curious, no, my mom is no longer worried about having to pick up the slack on my service projects. She's actually much more concerned about all the books I collect being an eyesore as we moved and no longer have a garage. So that's why I'm currently storing several boxes of books in my bedroom. But in all seriousness, I hope that if you took anything away from this speech, it's this. Whether it's your bedroom or your garage, whether you're 17, 12, or 70, you can get out there and you can be a positive force in our incredible community. Thank you for listening and have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, Ariela. So let me close my remarks and then I'll invite my panel to actually come up at the same time. I mentioned that at the beginning that we focus this as a policy convening, which is a little unusual, right? Sometimes we just get together. But the whole idea behind policy is the power of policy to actually affect change on the local level. And there are obviously elected officials here, former and current, who can attest to that. What does that look like? But there are also members in the community who can actually affect policy. There are Solidarity Fund representatives back over there, say hi, who actually affect policy through their volunteerism and their activities. There are members of our community who affect policy through their organizations. And so what I encourage you to do as we dive into the subjects that we're going to cover this morning is to also think about what are the policy implications for the work here. We're going to look at guaranteed basic income, for instance, as one of the first subject. There are some policy implications for that project now and in the future. But there are probably similar policy implications for the other subjects we're looking at as well. And I will encourage you as we participate in these conversations to identify how can you get involved in this conversation? How do you get involved in policy shaping both as a resident or in a professional role? Because you can affect change in a positive way on an individual level, on a group level, on a community level.